coworker. But the human mind doesn't forget the moments when something feels wrong. My instincts had shifted. Doubt had crept in. And once it takes root, it grows quickly, twisting ordinary moments into sinister clues. I tried to shake it off. I played my role, smiled when spoken to, joined in a toast. But deep down, I already knew something had shifted. A line had been crossed. This wasn't just the usual paranoia or insecurity. This was different. On the drive home, Brooke hummed along to the radio, tapping her fingers on the wheel, casual and carefree. She even teased me about how much barbecue I had piled onto my plate, laughing that I'd need to run extra miles to burn it off. I nodded and smiled faintly, but my thoughts were elsewhere. That wristband, that joke, that seamless deflection. The city lights blurred past the car windows, but my mind was replaying the scene in loops. Her laughter, the way the colleague's eyes had flickered with something more than just humor. The plastic wristband pressed against her skin. I didn't say anything that night. I kissed her cheek when we got home, let her shower, watched her fold her dress neatly over the chair. We climbed into bed like always. She fell asleep quickly, her breathing deep and steady. But I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every detail from that barbecue replaying in high definition. It was only one evening, only one small incident. But it was the first time in our marriage that I felt the foundation tremble. And I knew, even if I tried to bury it, even if I told myself I was imagining things, that doubt would never leave me again. After the barbecue, I tried to dismiss the unease, to fold it away like a shirt shoved into the back of a drawer. But it wouldn't stay hidden. It followed me, restless, whispering questions I didn't want to hear. I told myself I was overreacting, that one offhand remark and a plastic wristband weren't enough to dismantle trust built over years. And yet, when I let my mind drift, images surfaced unbidden. Scattered moments from the past months, small irregularities that suddenly aligned into a troubling pattern. The first thing I remembered was her phone. It used to be something that sat carelessly on the kitchen counter or the armrest of the couch, buzzing openly with notifications. Brooke had never guarded it. I used to joke about how I could probably memorize her entire contact list from seeing it flash so often. But sometime in late spring, the phone began to live face down, screen dark. It wasn't left behind on tables anymore. It followed her everywhere, even into the bathroom. She said it was because of work emails and sensitive projects. But to me, it looked like a wall being erected. Then there was the battery. I used to complain about how quickly her phone died, how she was always asking me for a charger when we were out. But suddenly, it never seemed to run out. Not once. Even after long days, the battery was full, as if it had been recharged somewhere else, in places and at times I couldn't see. Her wardrobe, too, began to change. Brooke was never careless about her appearance, but she had always been practical. A few well-chosen dresses, shoes that balanced style with comfort. But then, new clothes started appearing in the closet. Expensive pieces, silk blouses, designer heels, tailored skirts, outfits that didn't match her everyday life with me. And oddly, she rarely wore them at home or to family outings. They seemed reserved for somewhere else, some stage where I wasn't invited. At the same time, I noticed that older pieces disappeared quietly, like actors written out of a script without farewell. There were the new friends she mentioned offhandedly, names that meant nothing to me, people I had never seen, never heard stories about, yet they were suddenly the anchors for her late nights. Dinner with Rachel, catching up with Marcus, meeting some old college group, always vague, always last minute, as if the details themselves were irrelevant. When I asked about them, she was cheerful but curt, her tone sliding toward defensiveness. I stopped asking, though the unease grew. And the nights. God, the nights. Brooke had always loved her routines. Dinner around 7, an hour of TV, bed by 10. But in the past months, she became nocturnal. There were networking events and team meetups that stretched into midnight. She came home glowing, not weary, her perfume fresh as though applied just minutes before. The scent lingered in the hallway, unfamiliar brands that weren't part of her usual collection. Sometimes she slipped into the shower immediately, Other times she crawled into bed with that artificial brightness in her eyes, whispering that she was exhausted but fulfilled. I didn't say what I felt. That exhaustion leaves a person drained, not humming with secret energy. One memory struck me harder than the others. It was a Tuesday night, early summer. I had gone to bed earlier than usual, the weight of work pressing me down. Around midnight, I stirred and found her side of the bed empty. The house was silent. I padded downstairs and saw the faint glow from her phone in the kitchen. She was standing there in her nightgown, whispering into the screen, her back turned. I froze at the bottom of the stairs. She laughed softly at something, her hand tucking her hair behind her ear the way she does when she's flustered. Then she noticed me, turned, and for a split second her eyes widened. But immediately she smiled, waved the phone, and said, "Just my team in Asia time zones. You know?" I wanted to believe it, but the laughter I'd heard didn't sound like a work call. It sounded like int asterisk Macy. Her car told its own story. More than once, I got into the driver's seat and realized it had been adjusted. Pushed far back, too far for Brooke's frame. I asked about it once. She shrugged, said maybe the valet had changed it, or maybe she had done it absent-mindedly. I let it slide, but the thought remained, stubborn. Even her online presence shifted. Brooke had once filled her social media with couple photos, travel snaps *TS, silly candids of us at coffee shops. They disappeared gradually. Not all at once, that would have been too obvious. But one by one, over weeks, replaced by solo *TS, work-related posts, images of landscapes or dinners where I wasn't present. It wasn't just subtraction. It was a rewriting of her story, as though her life was being curated for someone else's eyes. I remembered the weekend she reset our shared tablet, claiming it had been glitching. Suddenly, my saved accounts were gone, replaced by her new work logins. When I asked for the password, she gave me a distracted smile and said she'd set it to something temporary she'd change later. Later never came. The strange purchases began to stand out, too. Small things at first, a bottle of wine, a necklace, cosmetics. But then larger items appeared on our joint statements. Charges at upscale boutiques, dinners at restaurants we'd never visited together. She explained them away as client outings or retail therapy. But they added up, a mosaic of inconsistencies that didn't fit the woman I thought I knew. The more I replayed these fragments, the more the pattern sharpened. Each moment, once dismissed as trivial, now glowed with new significance. It was like staring at a painting I had lived inside for years, only to realize the shadows were hiding something grotesque. And then there was the cologne. That detail haunts me still. One evening, as I helped her hang up her coat, a sharp, unfamiliar scent rose from the fabric. Not her perfume, a men's cologne. Bold, musky, expensive. I froze, holding the coat in my hands longer than necessary, the smell filling my lungs like smoke. Brooke noticed, of course. She always noticed. "Oh, that," she said with a laugh. "Someone must have brushed past me at the office." She kissed my cheek, breezed past me, and headed upstairs. The explanation was quick, too quick, rehearsed. Lying in bed that night, I stared into the dark and realized something terrifying. All of these memories, these scattered observations, were not random. They were connected. They formed a chain, a hidden architecture of deception. And I had ignored it, blinded by habit, by love, by the desperate desire to believe in the person beside me. The wristband at the barbecue hadn't been the first clue. It had simply been the one I couldn't ignore. There's a difference between suspicion and proof. Suspicion gnaws quietly, whispering in the back of the mind, making you question yourself more than the person you're watching. Proof, however, is a blade, cold, precise, merciless. Cuts through all the layers of denial. I didn't know when it would come or in what form, but a part of me already understood it was only a matter of time. It arrived, of all places, in her email. Brooke was meticulous about privacy. By then, she had locked every device, turned off location sharing, and brushed off my casual requests to use the tablet or her laptop. But one evening, while she showered, her computer sat on the dining table, open. I don't even know what made me look. Perhaps it was instinct, perhaps desperation, perhaps simply exhaustion from months of doubt. My hands moved before my conscience could stop them. The inbox stared back at me, neat, ordered, like everything she touched. I scrolled, not even sure what I sought. There were work memos, newsletters, receipts. And then I saw it. An email with the subject line reservation confirmation, the Amberton Boutique Hotel. My chest tightened as though the air itself had thickened. I clicked. The message was polite, formatted with hotel branding. Your reservation is confirmed for 1 double room, king bed, for 2 guests. Date, Thursday, 8 p.m. M. Friday, 11 a.m. M. Payment received. Below was the breakdown of charges, the room rate, the taxes, and attached, a digital copy of the receipt, clean and official. The date froze me in place. It was the same night she had claimed to be at a work dinner in Milwaukee, insisting she couldn't join me at my cousin's birthday. I remembered how easily she had said it, how natural her tone had been. I had believed her without question. But the email didn't end there. Attached was a second file, labeled simply, Entry Camera Footage, 9:13 p.m. M. My hand trembled as I opened it. The screen displayed a still frame from a security camera, grainy but clear enough. A side entrance, dimly lit. And there she was, Brooke, in a black dress I hadn't seen before, her hair tied back, her face turned slightly as if mid-laugh. Beside her, entering the door, was a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a blazer, his hand brushing her back in a gesture too familiar to be innocent. I stared at the image until my vision blurred. There it was. Not speculation, not coincidence. A hotel room, reserved in her name. A double bed. 2 guests. The time-stamped evidence of her arriving with him. No explanation could twist this into something else. It was fact. I wanted to scream, to smash the laptop against the wall, to storm into the bathroom, confront her dripping under the hot spray of the shower, demand an answer. But I didn't move. My body refused. I sat frozen, the image seared into me like a brand. Memories flooded back with vicious clarity. The wristband at the barbecue, the late nights, the perfume, the laughter at midnight in the kitchen. Each moment snapped into place around the photograph like puzzle pieces, creating a picture I no longer had the luxury of ignoring. I closed the file, shut the laptop, and sat in the silence. The sound of water upstairs felt mocking, as though the world carried on unchanged while mine had just shattered. My reflection in the darkened window looked strange, hollow. When she came down later, hair damp, wrapped in a towel, she smiled as though nothing had shifted. She kissed me lightly, said she was starving, rummaged for a snack. I watched her with new eyes, every movement alien, every gesture infected by betrayal. I couldn't speak. The words lodged in my throat like broken glass. I barely slept that night. Lying next to her felt unbearable, as if sharing a bed with a stranger. She drifted off easily, her breathing steady, while I stared at the ceiling until dawn, the image of that hotel doorway flashing each time I closed my eyes. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I made coffee, buttered toast, asked about her schedule. She answered casually, never noticing the tremor in my hands. But I already knew the truth, and it was like carrying a blade inside me, every movement cutting deeper. I considered confronting her right then. I imagined sliding the laptop across the table, pointing to the email, demanding she explain. But a darker thought stopped me. What if she lied again? What if she spun another flawless story, brushed it aside with that infuriating calm? The thought of hearing her deny what I knew, of watching her twist truth into falsehood, terrified me more than silence. So I said nothing. But silence is not peace. It is a storm gathering weight. Every smile she offered, every touch of her hand, every casual remark felt poisoned. She thought she was safe, that her careful rehearsed excuses had worked. But I had seen behind the curtain. I carried the knowledge quietly, letting it settle into me like a stone at the bottom of a river. I knew more proof would come, because cheaters always grow careless. They build systems of lies, but every system cracks eventually. Still, even if nothing else surfaced, I already had enough. The hotel, the receipt, the photograph, it was undeniable. And in that undeniable truth, something in me shifted forever. The man in the picture remained a mystery. His face was turned, shadowed, but I studied the details obsessively. His watch glinting under the light, his hand at her back, fingers spread with casual ownership. I tried to match him to the faces I'd seen at work functions, the colleagues she had named so vaguely. A few possibilities flickered in my mind, but no certainty. Not yet. I didn't know whether I wanted certainty. For now, the photograph was enough. Enough to crush the fragile hope I had clung to. Enough to draw a sharp line between before and after. Before, I had been a husband with doubts. After, I was a man who had seen his wife walking into a hotel with another man. There was no going back. After the hotel receipt, after the photograph, I thought the weight of certainty would somehow make me stronger, more decisive. But instead it hollowed me. Proof doesn't give peace. It strips illusions, leaving you exposed to the raw shape of betrayal. And yet, even with the truth in my hands, I stayed silent. I told myself I was watching, observing, waiting for the right moment. Maybe I wanted to understand how deep the deception ran. Maybe I wanted her to trap herself. Or maybe I wasn't ready to break the facade of our life just yet. That week, the test came by accident. I had been searching her gym bag for headphones, a habit I'd formed over the years, since she often tossed mine in with hers. I unzipped the side pocket, expecting the tangle of wires. Instead, my fingers brushed against a folded envelope. I pulled it out, heart thudding, and there it was, a printed gift certificate for a couple's spa ritual serenity package for two. The date was recent, the ink still crisp, the kind of voucher you couldn't mistake. It promised a 90-minute massage for two, private sauna access, champagne included. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, reading each line again and again. It wasn't addressed to her specifically, just a generic printout. But the implication was obvious. This wasn't something she would book with a colleague. This wasn't a work perk. This wasn't *Macy bought and planned. I didn't hide it. I wanted to see what she would do. So I placed the envelope on the kitchen counter, plain as daylight, and waited. That evening, Brooke came home cheerful, humming as she set her bag down. She spotted the paper immediately. I watched closely, expecting a flinch, a flicker of panic, a stumble in her words. But what I saw instead unsettled me more than any evidence could. She picked it up casually, glanced at it, and smiled with the calm of someone who had rehearsed. "Oh," she said lightly, "that's not mine. Someone must have slipped it in at the gym by mistake. You know how people leave papers around." Without hesitation, she folded it neatly, dropped it into the recycling bin, and turned to me with the same bright eyes, asking how my day had been. Not a heartbeat missed, not a crack in her voice. It was as though she had trained herself for this exact scenario. I stared, waiting for her mask to slip, for guilt to surface. Nothing did. Her movements were smooth, her tone playful, her posture relaxed. She even teased me about forgetting to take the trash out, laughing as though nothing weighed on her. That was when I understood something chilling. Lying had become second nature to her. She didn't scramble for excuses anymore. She carried them ready, polished, each one delivered with effortless grace. The confidence wasn't just habit, it was armor. She had lied enough times that the truth no longer threatened her. And in that realization, my stomach turned. I tried to recall earlier years, before the distance, before the secrets. Brooke hadn't always been like this. She used to blush when caught in small fibs, sneaking cookies before dinner, pretending she hadn't forgotten an errand. She had once been terrible at lying. But now, she could stare me straight in the eye, smile, and erase reality with a single sentence. The spa voucher wasn't the only discovery. Over the next days, more small anomalies surfaced, like breadcrumbs left behind by carelessness. A receipt crumpled in her coat pocket for an upscale restaurant we had never visited together. A hotel key card buried under paperwork in her car. An unfamiliar brand of body lotion tucked into her drawer, It sent cloying and sweet, nothing like her usual choices. Each time I found something, I placed it where she could see. Each time, she responded with the same calm denial. The restaurant? Oh. I grabbed that receipt from a colleague who needed it for expenses. The key card? Oh, that must have been left over from a conference event. The lotion? A gift from a coworker. Every answer fluid, confident, unwavering. And every time I believed her less. The frightening part wasn't the lies themselves, but her composure. She no longer reacted as someone caught off guard. She reacted as someone who expected to be caught, and already had the script prepared. I realized then that the truth, to her, wasn't something to defend. It was something to replace, to overwrite, to bury beneath layers of practiced stories until even I questioned my own memory. At night, lying beside her, I studied the curve of her face in the dim light. She looked peaceful, lips parted in sleep, hair spilling over the pillow. But I no longer saw peace. I saw the face of someone capable of deception so smooth, so ingrained, that it had become her second skin. I began to doubt myself in dangerous ways. Was I losing my grip? Was I imagining connections where there were none? But then I remembered the email, the photograph. Proof was undeniable. And yet, her confidence made me hesitate, as though I were the intruder, the one inventing shadows. It was a twisted power she held, the ability to make truth feel fragile, to gaslight without raising her voice, to lie so convincingly that reality itself bent around her words. And as I watched her that week, moving through the house with her easy smile, chatting about her projects, planning weekends I knew would never happen, I understood. My wife was living two lives. One with me, polished and calm, and another hidden, stitched together with secrecy and denial. What chilled me most was not the betrayal itself, but how ordinary she made it seem. As if deceit were just another chore, as natural as laundry or grocery shopping. The spa voucher, the receipts, the keycard, none of it shook her. But they shook me. They showed me that I was no longer living with the Brooke I had married. I was living with her mask. And masks, once cracked, never looked the same again. After the spa voucher incident, after watching Brooke lie with such flawless ease, I stopped waiting for a single moment of collapse. I realized that the truth wasn't hidden in one dramatic revelation but scattered in fragments. Small signals that alone could be dismissed, but together formed a chain heavy enough to drag me under. So I began to write them down. It started with a notebook I kept in my desk drawer, hidden beneath old tax forms. On the first page, I drew a line down the middle and titled the left side incidents and the right side excuses. I told myself it was for clarity, for sanity, that if I mapped it all out, I'd see whether my mind was playing tricks or whether my wife had truly built a life of lies. The list grew quickly. 1. New passwords on her devices. Once, Brooke and I had shared everything. Phones, tablet, even her work laptop when she needed me to check emails. But suddenly, there were codes I didn't know, locks where there had been none. She brushed it off. Work policy. Confidential clients. I wrote both the incident and the excuse side by side. 2. Location sharing turned off. For years, our phones had synced locations, a practical habit for safety during late commutes or long drives. One day I checked, and hers was blank. She waved it away. Battery drain. I turned it off. Into the notebook it went. 3. The gym across town. Brooke used to go to a fitness studio 5 minutes from our house. Then she switched to one 20 minutes away, claiming it had better equipment. I drove past once on a Saturday when she said she was there. The parking lot was empty. I didn't tell her. I simply wrote it down. 4. Strange purchases. Designer heels, silk dresses, luxury skincare. None of it appeared at home, but the bank statements carried the charges. Her excuse was always the same: work presentation, client dinner, gift for a colleague. Each line item entered my notebook. 5. The perfume. Sometimes she came home late, her fragrance fresh, sharp, newly applied. Not the faded trace of morning application, but the pungent intensity of minutes ago. When I once asked why she smelled so strong after midnight, She smiled and said she'd tested a sample at a store on her way home. Another neat entry in the notebook. 6. The cologne on her coat. The scent that didn't belong to her or me. She laughed it off. Someone brushed past me. Written down. 7. Cash withdrawals. Brooke rarely used cash. Yet ATM slips appeared in her purse, always from machines in the business district or near hotels. When I asked, she shrugged. Lunch with clients. Some places don't take cards. Into the list. 8. Calendar wipes. Our shared family calendar, once filled with reminders, dinner plans, dentist appointments, birthdays, had gone blank for weeks at a time. She said she'd switched to a new app at work. But in reality, it was as if she had erased herself from my line of sight. 9. Unfamiliar names. Rachel, Marcus, Elise, friends she mentioned casually, people I never met. Each became another item in the chain. As the pages filled, I felt both vindicated and sickened. Vindicated because I could finally see the pattern laid bare, proof that my instincts weren't paranoid fantasies. Sickened because every entry marked another betrayal, another piece of the marriage I thought I knew dissolving. I noticed a rhythm to her deception. Wednesdays and Thursdays were the most suspicious. The nights she stayed out later, the days her mood swung between giddy and distant. Fridays, she came home glowing, energized, as though returning from some hidden holiday. Mondays were quieter, almost guilty, her smile softer, her words clipped. By midweek, the cycle began again. One night, while folding laundry, I found a train ticket stub in her pocket. A trip to Milwaukee, timed perfectly with one of her supposed regional meetings. She had never mentioned it to me. The stub smelled faintly of her perfume, as if it had sat in her purse close to a bottle. I wrote it down. Another time, I noticed her nails, freshly manicured, painted a color she rarely wore, a deep crimson. When I commented, she laughed. The salon was offering a deal, but the timing didn't match. She'd been out late the night before, claiming to be at a team dinner. I added it to the growing chain. Each item seemed trivial in isolation. That was her power, to make me doubt myself, to make each clue look small. But together, they told a story she refused to admit. The more I wrote, the more paranoid I became. I started studying her expressions, the cadence of her voice, the way she scrolled on her phone with her thumb tilted away from me. Every laugh that wasn't shared with me felt like evidence. Every text that lit her screen and made her smile became a line in my mental logbook. I realized she had created an entire system of secrecy. Passwords, excuses, alternate routines, objects planted or removed with precision. It was too consistent to be careless. It was architecture, a house of deception built brick by brick, with me trapped inside as the unknowing guest. One evening, I caught her standing by the window, phone pressed to her ear, her voice hushed. She laughed softly, the sound in asterisk mate, tender. When she noticed me behind her, she ended the call abruptly. Work, she said with a bright smile. Late update from the team. I didn't challenge her. I simply wrote it down. But the notebook wasn't just a record. It was a mirror, forcing me to face a question I didn't want to answer. Why was I still here? Why was I cataloging betrayals instead of confronting them? The truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of what would happen when I finally tore the mask away. Afraid of her lies. Afraid, maybe, of confirming that the life we had built was already ashes. And yet, with every entry, the chain grew heavier. The signals no longer whispered. They screamed. I wasn't imagining things. My wife was living a double life, and I had the evidence to prove it, even if she would never admit it aloud. Unable to bear the guessing, I asked Andrew, a private investigator I once knew, to follow Brooke. His photos told the truth. Every Wednesday she drove to a countryside retreat. Minutes later, a man arrived. They checked in under false names, stayed until morning, and left separately. The images, the receipts, the routine, everything matched. It was no longer suspicion. It was certainty. I didn't confront her. I packed my essentials, left keys and money in the mailbox, and vanished into another city. Her text shifted from questions to pleading, then regret. I stayed silent. Months later, I heard her affair had surfaced at work, leading to an investigation. The colleagues who once joked at barbecues became witnesses of her collapse, while I was already rebuilding my life, free from her lies.